full 7 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Acting Deputy President. I rise to speak on this matter of public importance about our Prime Minister's continued denial of the reality of climate change and his continued mealy-mouthed approach to meeting our global responsibilities to assist countries who will suffer from our profligate use of fossil fuels. I'm from Queensland, where it's been obvious to all, both observing and protesting against the Prime Minister's refusal to put climate change on the G20 agenda, that he was totally out of step with the world and out of step with community expectations. Now, of course, the Prime Minister was utterly gazumped and shown for the laggard and the spoiler that he is when China and the US reached agreement last week on emissions targets. And the Greens welcome this acknowledgement, and we welcome this step forward, although, of course, this important commitment does not absolve President Obama from needing to refuse approval for the Keystone tar sands oil pipeline from Canada and for deeper and binding cuts to emissions. But that said, the Greens warmly welcome the announcement of a fund to assist with climate adaptation for less wealthy nations who stand to suffer unfairly from the impacts of climate change. But Australia, the highest per capita emitter in the world, is too greedy and too self-interested to stump up and contribute to this fund. And Mr Tony Abbott's excuse? Well, apparently we're already doing enough. Now, this is, of course, after this government has axed more than $7 billion from foreign aid, which includes some climate programs. And to add insult to injury, Tony Abbott is trying to count the $10 billion Clean Energy Finance Corporation funding, which his government has a bill to abolish in this parliament. And Mr Tony Abbott wants to count his big polluters slush fund as a meaningful contribution as well. This slush fund for big polluters, with its pathetic 5% target, is just more subsidies for fossil fuels. And of course today we see that in Queensland our Premier will bankroll the building of a 500-kilometre railway for Indian coal company Adani to open up the Galilee Basin, the mega coal basin that would see coal exports more than double through the Great Barrier Reef World Heritage Area. Now, why is it that the Queensland government has to kick in the dough? Well, it's because nobody else will. No investment bank will touch this poor investment. This is a bad investment for Queensland, and Premier Newman is simply propping up a dying industry that the world increasingly does not want a part of. Now, perhaps the worst part of this is the audacity of Premier Newman's decision to fund this propping up of fossil fuels from selling Queensland's public assets. Flogging off Queensland's public assets to give free money to the coal industry is not going to go down well with Queenslanders. Queenslanders don't want privatisation in any event, and we certainly don't want free money to coal barons to trash the reef and the climate. But of course we're told that the coal is to help bring Indians out of poverty. It's a public service. Well, except for the fact that the coal will be too expensive for them to afford, the fact that they don't have the electricity grid in many of those areas, and the fact that air quality from coal pollution is killing more than 85,000 Indians per year. Fossil fuel subsidies, however, are not new. Recently, a report found that federally, Australia gives more than $4 billion of fossil fuel subsidies. In fact, we were the second largest in the G20 when it comes to propping up the fossil fuel sector. Now, we know that climate change is real and that it's actually already affecting us with extreme weather events. And the irony of a November heat wave on the G20 weekend just gone was not lost on anyone, except perhaps, of course, our Prime Minister. Now, climate change is affecting other industries which rely on a healthy climate, like agriculture and, of course, tourism. And I hope people are familiar with the fact that the Great Barrier Reef has already lost 50% of its coral cover in the last 27 years. Now, that's due to extreme weather events, to coral bleaching and also crown-of-thorns starfish. All of those threats, plus the new ones of a dredging and dumping bonanza for more coal ports in the reef, are either being driven or worsened by climate change. Our reef is the largest living organism that can be seen from space, and it faces the biggest ever threat that it has in climate change. We must safeguard this natural wonder, this economic generator of $6 billion a year and this employer of 63,000 people. Even President Obama, in his very well-received talk at the University of Queensland at the weekend, lauded the beauty of the Great Barrier Reef and said that he wanted his daughters and his grandchildren to come to see it. And I share those sentiments. But instead, Premier Newman wants to put new and expanded coal ports in the reef, with all of that associated dredging, dumping and climate impacts. Unfortunately, they are still treating the reef like a rubbish tip, and Minister Hunt's commitment to stop offshore dumping comes with so many holes that it's meaningless. The dumping cannot happen in a marine park, but never mind about the rest of the World Heritage Area. It's only a ban on capital dredging, never mind about maintenance dredging, and it's only for future projects, never mind all of the projects that are currently on foot. The solution is clear and it's shining down on us every day. Concentrated solar thermal, solar photovoltaics, wind, wave, tidal, geothermal energy. Renewable energy is job-rich and it can fulfil our energy needs cleanly. Globally, there is an unstoppable momentum towards clean renewable energy, and not even Prime Minister Tony Abbott can stop that. Australians love clean energy. Indeed, in Queensland, we have the highest proportion of solar on our roofs, with more than 1 in 5 households being part of the solution. Our government is wrecking that attempt at a sustainable future by axing the carbon price, the mining tax, attacking the renewable energy target, defunding ARENA, saying that it will abolish the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, and driving the expansion of dangerous unconventional gas fracking, which is ruining our land and water for export corporate greed. This government has a tin ear to science and to the community, and that's why the Australian people will confine them to the dustbin of history at the next election.